Couple we had kids that were funny.
Technology, man.
Oh, yeah. I had a baby with it.
We're gonna have
All that water.
everybody ready?
Yep.
Here we go. This time we'll call the Monday, June 10th, 2024 meeting to order. Welcome everybody in attendance. Thank you for being here. And if you will, please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, before we dive too far into the fray, I've got a little award here for one of our special visitors with us tonight. We have the comeback player of the year, Mr. David
All right.
We all want to say thank you for what you did for us this year. We really appreciate you coming back out and helping out the schools.
Happy to do it.
Thank you very, very much.
Very good. Thank you very much. Carl, I said another way over. I said Carl Land is here to make sure I don't do anything else stupid from this point on.
I've already talked to Murphy. No.
It was a great experience. It's a great school. It's a great staff, and I was glad that I could help y'all out for those 4 months. But today I was up for a bike ride and a walk and all the rest of that, so it was really good. So thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciate you. Yep. Yep.
And y'all can say what you want. Jumping into a principal job mid-year after 2 people have already been there is no joke. So,
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
and Carlin, I told you how to have been here quick. So,
But I got it all dressed up.
and he's happy about that. Thank you, guys.
Thank y'all.
All right, next we're looking for approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review? We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'm second.
Motion with a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Moving down under instructional, we have the CTE plan. Mr. Josh Hill. And I do have a copy of the plan if anybody would like to take a look at it and peruse it.
And that's the thing. Thank y'all for having me tonight. I'm going to try to condense 70 some odd pages. I think it's about 79 pages into a quick spiel. Kind of tell you what we're proud of this year, things that went well, and then a little bit about the local plan. Just starting at the top, we have a document I know Brandon's working on putting up for you, but a couple of things we were proud of this year. The biggest one, the big push you'll hear in the state right now is credentials, is graduating these students with some type of work-based credential. We were actually really excited in our final numbers. We jumped from last year, we had about 840 of those. In the 2022-23 year, we jumped up to 1,200 this academic year. So we're proud of that. So including that are OSHA certifications, CNA certifications, things like that, Adobe as well. So we were proud of that. Couple of things that we learned through our local planning process, the CLNA process. That's basically the abbreviation of that massive document there. We can scroll down just to number 2. There you go. A couple of the things we want to keep doing, kind of plans moving forward, that if you read that whole thing, what you're going to find is we're looking to continue to expand work-based learning opportunities. We've got some good things going, a lot of internship opportunities they're doing through early childhood. We've got some good work-based opportunities within healthcare with St. Luke's. What we would like to do, or I would, pie in the sky, I'd like to have happen over the next 2 or 3 years, is to get that to where every area that we offer, there's a work-based learning component that can go with that. So for example, if you're an ag concentrator and you want to go do some work-based learning on a farm here locally, we're going to try to set something like that up. Same thing, construction, masonry, all the way through. So that's one thing we're working on. Another thing is increasing the concentrator status among minority students. When I look at my data, I have lots of students participating. I think we're still, last time I saw was around 92% of our students participate in CTE classes. What we're seeing those with minority students, they may take a lot of different classes, but they're not necessarily taking a pathway, meaning they're not taking a level 1 and a level 2, which makes them a concentrator. So that's kind of a data dive and trying to figure out why that is. You know, are we not getting them in the right place to start with? Are they not liking the pathway they're in or the courses? So it's trying to figure out why that's happening. And that's part of my digging process that I'm working on. The third dot, I'm sure you've heard about, is career development planning, which is a big deal. The state's passed legislation about when and where that happens. We have a process already where we're kind of doing that, where you start at the middle school and look at interest inventories and kind of the classes they should take moving forward. But we're trying to enhance that a whole lot more. I'm not sure exactly what that'll look like, kind of based on some personnel shifts. It could be something we continue to sort of do in-house, or we've investigated some online platforms. I know I shared some with Mr. Green, trying to find what's the best fit for our students. You know, I'm happy with the one I've seen, but we're just trying to take it slowly kind of as this process develops. We've been a part of the pilot program for the state. Everybody's confused about what it exactly will look like. So I'm trying not to rush into anything, but I want to have a good plan in place. Couple more highlights, some things we did this year. I got to give credit. Lindsay did a lot of this. Lindsay Edwards, some programs. We added a CTE student of the month. We had a person who sponsored that for us, and they get a gift basket. You may have seen that some on the Instagram or Facebook, where we vote on a student of the month, and they get recognized for their efforts in CTE programs. Lindsay's done a great job of spotlighting alumni so that kids can kind of see, you know, these are all the pathways available to you right here out of Polk County, and this is kind of how CTE may have contributed to that for that student. Lindsay did a big career expo this year. It was kind of cool because she did a different spin on it. I thought that instead of it just being like, here's a job that you might want one day, it was kind of set up more to where these were people when they had applications on the table, more geared towards juniors and seniors. Hey, I can have you come work for me right now. Or it was more ready opportunities to go work instead of, hey, one day you can be a banker. It's kind of like how you could get into that field on a ground level. So that was good. The Pro Beach Proud Truck came around this year, really cool thing. It's hard to believe that was this year. That feels like forever ago. That was back in the fall. We were, like I mentioned earlier, participating in the CDP plan pilot. We also did a big resume writing clinic with our 12th graders that the Workforce Development Board came and helped us with, and we thought that was great. I've already covered pre-apprenticeship. Like I said, that's a big focus of what we wanted to do to expand that. And then the last thing we wanted to recognize, we did receive a Dogwood grant in the fall, which was a big deal for us. Two things. The first one, there's an expedition that we have that teachers can use to take on their professional development, and then also to transport students for work-based learning. And then a lot of these competitions and things they go to, the best example I'll give you is FFA. They are going somewhere all the time. Rental vans and rental vehicles cost a fortune. You would be shocked at how much money I spend just on renting vehicles to take kids to Oklahoma, for example. It's not insignificant, and I think that donation is going to help a lot to reduce some of the bottom line within the CTE budget, which will go back to buying more instructional materials for kids instead of funding vehicle rental. And then also the Anatomage table. I think y'all have seen that. We're proud of that. That's a really cool thing. Emily Pereira is spending a lot of time this summer working on developing lesson plans geared specifically to that. And I know we've talked about, I think, with Jan, and talking about bringing some of our middle school students in, or even elementary school students where it's appropriate, kind of have our high school students teach lessons to the middle school, but it's a unique opportunity. Usually you only find those in medical schools. So it's a really cool piece of equipment. We've got to learn how to use it better to maximize the capability. So last thing I'll show you, they don't give us the red and green report. I know Mr. Parsons loved the red and green report. They quit giving that to us. And even this year, they didn't really give me enough information to compare kind of where we were at performance-wise. But this will show you where we were at related to the state. I can tell you, when you look at Western counties, I can't get anybody by name. But when I look at where we were at and where the counties around us were at, we're doing pretty well. But if you just go down the list, 4-year graduation rate, this is all based on CTE concentrators. We're above the state average, proficiency, language arts, math, science, we're doing well. Post-secondary placement, we're kind of on a bubble right there, neck and neck. A lot of that has to do with survey data, and can you get a hold of the people you're trying to check in with. Every year I have to call everyone who graduated or get in touch with them somehow and say, hey, what are you doing now? Are you enrolled? Are you enlisted? Are you employed? What's going on? Non-traditional enrollment, that thing bumps around. That's all based on who's taking your classes. Do you have females taking ag classes and being concentrators? Do you have males taking nursing or health science classes? Are they concentrators? A year ago, we were #1 in the state in that. It just kind of goes like this. It's all based on who wants your programs, especially in a school our size. That's a tricky one, so I'm not worried about it. Post-secondary credentials, one of the first things I mentioned we were proud about. That's where we jumped from 800 to 1,200, and we are way above the state average, what they're looking for on that. I think we're pretty high in the region. I don't know if we'll ever get told. Program quality and other, that's how our kids do on their tests. Any tests related to CTE, any performance-based measures. So we're doing well. We have great teachers, we have great students, and it's nothing magical that I have. People ask us all the time questions about, hey, how do you do this or that? I'm like, you got to have my students and you got to have my teachers, and other than that, I just try to manage the budget the best I can. So but that's pretty much it, and if y'all have any questions, I'll be glad to answer. I appreciate your time.
Mr. Hill, the plan in terms of just mechanics is very typical of what we approve each year. Is that
Yes,
correct?
sir. Very much. Really and truly, those pages, there's a lot of redundancy in there when you're looking at areas for improvement, and a lot's around the minority, and then some looking at the non-traditionals. Like in English too, your non-traditional learners performed, this much. I will tell you, I've drilled down the data enough. You're talking about 2 or 3 kids. Yeah, so very traditional. Main focus, like I said, is looking at those minority students, improving concentrator rates and that, and then really the work-based learning expansion. But yeah, otherwise, budgetary, all that very similar to what we've always done. Same positions as far as teachers. They're not giving me man months anytime soon that I'm aware of. I would love it if they would, but I don't see anything on the horizon. The good news is we're not going backwards in man months. So.
Well, Mr. Chair and Board, I would also be remiss not to, you mentioned students and teachers. Well, leadership is awfully good too. And I really have to commend Mr. Hill, Ms. Bean, their whole staff over there for really driving this CTE train. I think down even better roads than we've been in the past. So thank you for the work you've been doing, and the administration on this end certainly recommends approval of the CTE plan.
Any other questions? If not, we look for a motion and second for approval.
I move we approve the CTE. Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Hill.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Great night. Appreciate it.
Next, we have the AIG Summer Seminars. Ms. Jan from.
Good evening, members of the board, and happy summer to you. I know we are excited to be continuing our student involvement even throughout the summer months. So we are currently, right now, we're in our 2nd week of summer school for our elementary students. But wanted to say a special thank you to the Polk County Community Foundation for once again funding our AIG seminars. So I don't know if anything gets you excited, but when I look at some of these classes that our students get to participate in, man, it makes me want to go back to school and participate with them, right? So I did check today. We currently have 69 of our students already signed up for our AIG seminars. So we're going to have a good group of students. We are participating in those during the months of June and July. So some of the topics, I won't read them all to you, but some of them were robotics, engineering. So the students will get to participate in basic level coding with various robotics during some of those seminars. They will introduce the students to basic computer science concepts, robotic programming, and problem solving in a fun, comprehensive approach to STEM. So all of that is engaging and exciting for our students. We also have Ms. Morse will be doing bullet journaling, embroidery, and being mindful. And in that course, they're exploring doodling techniques and learning basic embroidery stitches. They will also take time for reflective journaling after their nature walks. Learning through art. So one of our teachers is working on all three of the subjects, social studies, ELA, and math. And during social studies, they're going to create history boxes. In math, they're going to learn to create art with compasses, protractors, and rulers. And then in science, they're doing a color experiment using the scientific method. Another one I think sounds super fun is a study of forensic science. One of our students will have the opportunity to study the dynamics of DNA and how powders help solve crimes. So I'm sure many of our students will be excited about that one. There's another one called Nature and Art. And during this one, Ms. Moran and Ms. Ludi will be creating birdhouses. They will be journaling, writing, and creating poetry, and pottery, excuse me, not poetry. And then coding with drones. So during this one, Mrs. Reinhardt will be working with the students to use block coding to code a small drone through a series of Lego obstacles that the kids will be building. So if you guys want to join us for any of those classes, I'll see if I can get you in one of those slots, okay? So we keeping our numbers low, 1 to 10, which is great. It's a great student to teacher ratio. So like I said, we've already had 69 students sign up. It is free to our AIG students. We gave them multiple weeks to sign up for those camps. And now our extra slots, there's not many, but the extra slots that are left, we're opening for the teachers to reach out to students they think may be interested in participating in those. So super excited.
How many kids are in summer school?
This year we had about 64 right now. It's just elementary, K-5. Yeah. But this one, the camps are AIG.
Questions for Ms. Crump? Thank you, Ms. Crump.
All right. Thank you. Have a great summer.
You as well.
Thank you.
Next, we have the wrestling overnight field trip request. Mr. Green.
Yes, sir. As presented, we did have a clarifying question about the female wrestlers going along. There will be chaperones there as they stay. They can help monitor our female wrestlers as well. Ratios are good. I think it's a great activity for them to go do. Our wrestling program has really been taken off, and I think it's a good one. So administration would recommend that we approve.
Any questions? Looking for a motion and a second for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion carries 7-0. Next, we have Polk County High School curriculum discussion. Mr. Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not too long ago, our curriculum committee met with Ms. Bean, Ms. Malden, Mr. Transu, Mr. Hill. We talked all about different things there in regard to 3 topics. Number 1, honor graduates. We talked about the week setup for the high school schedule, and we talked about the number of career and college promise classes that are being taken and how that impacts, for lack of a way to describe this phenomenon, the GPA game that people play. So after that discussion, I think our curriculum committee felt that we needed to come and bring the majority of this to the board. And so I'm going to hush and allow Ms. Bean to step up and go through the handout that, or the information that you received. And I'm sure we'll have a robust discussion as we go along. Ms. Bean, Mr. Transu. Yeah.
All right, we made some notes. So if y'all will pass one of these around, that would be great. I'm going to kind of give you a little run through of what we have talked about. And then if you have any questions, they know more than I do. So basically, are we going to talk about the 9-week thing too?
Let's get that out of the way. That's the easiest low hanging fruit. So the early college is on a 9-week schedule versus a 6-week like we used to do with elementary and middle. And they're on that so that they can coincide with the community college. Great. And we feel like it would behoove the high school with them being on a semester system also to move to 9 weeks. The board had always felt, I think, strongly about a 6-week time frame because we wanted to make sure parents were informed and kept up to date. But with Power School and in turn Infinite Campus, the way it is, they can get real-time information from their kids on their grades, and some of the parents here can attest to that. So we'd like to, if your board's not opposed, we want to move them to a 9-week setup instead of a 6-week setup, with the understanding that those parents and students will still have access to all of their grades and reporting as they need to. So if anybody has heartburn about that, I've been talking about it, but I think the committee felt okay about moving forward in that direction. So,
And as a teacher, I will tell you, because I went from 9 week to 6 week, at the very beginning of school, it's really hard the first 6 weeks when you're doing a lot of formative assessing and all those kinds of things to figure out where to level the playing, where is everybody? And it'll take a week or 2 to figure all that out. So it's kind of unfairly weighted, the 6-week periods, that kind of thing, I always felt for myself. And I moved pretty quick in the classroom. And I do think it also prepares these kids for those that are college bound, because that's how college operates. So it's all these things that I think will help. And I think you mentioned to me something about Infinite Campus.
Yes, so part of the transition that we're going through is that Infinite Campus forces you to break down its number of intervals to the lowest common denominator, which means on the teacher side of things, instead of as they see it right now in Power School, which is, I was gonna say T1, T2, T3 for each one of the 6 weeks, Infinite Campus forces you to break that into 3-week intervals because of how we've done our scheduling. It's very unusual to do 6-week terms. So because of that on the teacher side, they would have been effectively putting in grades and intervals of, they would have had Ts 1 through 6 and they're reporting on the backside, which is going to get very complicated for parents to even keep up with. You know, what does T4 mean? Where are you at in the semester? What does that look like? So that was going to be a really complex process with Infinite Campus. Doable, but it would have been very convoluted, especially on the consumer side, the parent trying to understand what was happening. Going to 9 weeks or quarters makes this very clean and very simple on the parent side with where you stand as far as consuming the information at that campus.
We'll certainly reduce the number of spirited discussions we have in our household.
Well, I think the important thing for the board to know is one thing that I talked to Ms. Bean about, and I've always talked to principals about, is the board's intent back when we were doing paper reports was that every 3 weeks you got something, interim 6 weeks, interim 6 weeks. Now with it being real time, parents can access those things at any point. And teachers feel that pressure because they're getting calls from their parents, they're getting comments from students about, hey, you haven't graded that yet. Hey, you haven't graded that yet.
Yeah.
So I almost think, our intention is a little bit, the point we were trying to always make with communication solves itself in that regard. And certainly Ms. Bean will be sure to make sure those teachers understand feedback, letting parents know, students know if they're not doing well. All those things are very, very important. But to me, at this point, whether you're talking 6 or 9 weeks, it really doesn't make a difference because all that stuff's available in real time to parents right now.
And we have an opt-in for paper, anything, because we had so much pushback against all this report cards and all this stuff coming in all the time. And parents were like, we don't want all that stuff, believe it or not. And so we had an opt-in this year. Sign here if you want all your interims and all your report cards and everything paper. We had 22, is that what I told you? 22 parents. And of those 22, 20 had kids who were like in the top 10%. So it was just like, oh, look at boo-boo, and whatever, hanging their stuff on the fridge or something like that. It wasn't the kids whose parents need to be keeping track. You know what I'm saying? So that it all kind of lends itself to this immediacy I think that people have already.
And at any point, any parent can call and get paper copies.
Oh, when they do.
Want. But we think that recommendation would help kids, would help high school for sure, and will certainly help on the student information system management side.
That's something we need to approve.
No, I don't think so. I think as long as nobody has heartburn about it, we're going to move and make that transition as we move to Infinite Campus. Okay.
All right. And we also talked about moving from a numbers for honor graduate to a percentage of honors graduates. And you'll see that at the very top here of your little sheet on the very first page. Basically what we did is we looked at historical data, right? And in 2019, we had 6 students who were summa cum laude. This year we had 22. And 55% of the students in the class received a cum laude award out of 131 graduates. So it sort of gets back to that thing, if everybody's special, nobody really is, right? So we're trying to figure out a way to kind of level this off and make it look like a real bell curve, which again, these are the kids who are going to be going to college and need to be kind of immersed in those conversations, right? And kind of how this system actually in fact works. So what we thought we would do, and it's down here, it says our proposal is to work within a percentage model, Summa's top 5, Magna 10, cum laude top 15. And then, whose idea, was it your idea? Megan's idea. To do an unweighted honors graduates. So kids who do really well, like make straight A's, but don't take all the AP classes and all the CCP classes and all of those things, we're going to recognize them as well. And because we have a really intense example of a student who is probably the smartest kid in our school in the upcoming senior class, and she's ranked number 24.
Yes.
because she has not played that game. She likes art and she likes band. So she's not worried about CCP. She's not worried about all of that stuff. And she made the highest ACT score, and she's the only student in our school currently that has National Merit Honors credentials. And she is not in the running for anything because she puts art and band above everything else, as she should be able to. So that's why we have that unweighted just in the cum laude, just to make sure that we are lifting up those students. It winds up being 2 or 3. Who have that incredible straight A, everything's great, everything's good. And I thought that was a great idea as well, just to make sure that everybody's accounted for.
From a percentage standpoint, what would you be looking at with a typical senior class of, say, 160 kids? 15% is going to wind up being 24, 10% is 16, 5% is 8. And so that's, if you think about what we've done traditionally in the past, that's typically where your honor graduates are, is about that number. And we knew when we put this policy in place, we all talked about we'd have to come back and revisit these cut points as we got more and more information and things changed. So I certainly, would support a change in that policy and talked again with the curriculum committee. I'd be interested to hear if they had any other thoughts around that, but I think this is a good idea.
Well, and the inverse of what you would think has wound up happening, because our largest number of honor graduates this year was the Summas. It's not supposed to be that way. Those are supposed to be those elite of the elite kids, right? That was the by far largest group. And then it kind of factored down from there. So
I just think it's a better way to highlight the performance of kids at that level. So that'll come up in a policy later on. That's a policy change, as it's in our graduation policy. So no action to be taken right now. Just know that when Dr. Schweitzer talks about that policy, that's what we'll approve that particular change. You guys are open to that.
Quick question.
Yes.
Do you know, and maybe the counselors would know, in applying to college, is it ranking that stands more than getting a designation like cum laude or summa or something like that?
It's GPA and ranking and like extracurricular activities, and they have to write a paper. So there's a lot of different criteria that go into that.
So they'll get their ranking, but it doesn't matter whether you get a summa or cum designation. That's not the.
Because
They don't, no, sorry.
Go ahead.
They don't get the recognition until senior awards night anyway,
That's
so they're not
they've
putting that
already
on
applied.
any kind of
That's exactly what you were
anything.
saying. Yeah, they're already done.
yeah, they're already accepted.
And there are so many schools that play the game different ways with their honor graduates. You wouldn't have any consistency across schools. So
Correct.
if I was a college, I wouldn't be looking at that.
No.
So the issue for this is basically parents pushing kids to get into
100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
all the extra classes, right?
We have parents who still are absolutely bound by the notion of the valedictorian. Like they want their kid to be number one. And you tell them there could be 17 number ones. No, but I want my kid to be the one.
And you get it. I mean, you understand.
And it's okay because, who doesn't want their kid to be number one? The game has just changed so much that it's hard. And that's why all of these conversations are so difficult, because it's easy for us because we live and roll around in it every day. But it's hard for parents, a lot of parents, especially those who maybe didn't go to college and those kinds of things. It's very, very tricky. And what we're trying to do is make this more equitable for those kids whose parents don't know and who don't know how to help them or guide them or lead them and rely on us to do it for them or with them.
Which actually leads us into the final part of our discussion here. I think it's very appropriate, and that is we have kids playing the game that are missing out on the comprehensive high school experience that we feel like they should have to make a good decision about what they want to do with life. So you'll hear about kids who are literally taking college coursework just to get the quality points for the GPA. They don't care about the course. The course is really easy. It doesn't benefit them other than getting that half a GPA point. And so what are we doing?
Well, the notion of the liberal arts secondary education is going away really fast. And it's sad because it winds up just being this tedium that pushes these kids toward this end goal that we can control because kids are only judged by their cohort. So one thing that really upsets parents, and you have to kind of talk to them a lot about, is when our students are applying, the GPA that they have is solely based on the number of credits that they could achieve at their high school. So my daughter at Myers Park High School 100 years ago graduated with a 5.8 GPA. She did that because there was IB there, which is a whole different beast. I mean, a completely different color. And so Clara graduated with 5.8. You couldn't get a 6.0, you could get a 5.9 Infinity. And because she graduated, well, there were 800 something kids in her class, but she graduated number, I can't even remember, 30 something, 40 something, and she had a 5.8. So she was judged by those number of classes, the IB classes, all of those things. So it mattered, the GPA with her class and the kids that graduated with her, not the kids that came before or after. And that's what it's hard to explain to parents, that maybe in Hendersonville, you know, you can have 10,000 CCP classes and everybody gets a 4.9. Good for y'all. It doesn't matter. They aren't judged by them, only us. That's helpful, and it has to be that way because we're tiny and we can't have an IB program here. You know, so it would not be equitable for college admission. Does that make sense to everybody? It's kind of whatever, it's very convoluted. So anyhow, so the real meat and potatoes of what we're going to talk about, and hopefully not bore you too long, is really about limiting CCP classes for our kids. This is very contentious. It makes me very nervous because I don't want anybody, I don't want parents to think we're doing something weird, shady, and I don't want kids not to be able to do what they want to do. We're not about any of that. What we're trying to do is do two things. We're trying to save CTE, like Josh was just talking about. We're trying to save our electives. And we're trying to get kids back to the notion of they can take elective classes that they are interested in at their high school and not some 8-week psych class that everybody gets together at somebody's house and they do the work together. They all cheat and do the work together and they all get an A and move forward and don't learn a thing. So that is sort of the impetus for all of this for us, is to try to kind of make sense of what's happening. So where it says proposals on limitations, right now kids can take up to 72 hours of, of dual enrollment credit, which is a lot, a whole lot. And it winds up creating a situation where they take them during the day, they take them in the summertime, they're taking them all the time, everywhere they can do. And so if you have a mom or dad who understands this little game and gets it, and your mom and dad is pushing you, going, come on, you can do this thing, you got it, it's all good, come on, come on, come on, right? You're gonna rise up. If you don't have a parent who understands this, and you don't have somebody who can, well, you know what we'll do? I'll drive you to Blue Ridge this summer, and you can take 4 classes this summer, it'll be great, right? So what it does is it just creates a larger and larger divide for the kids who cannot and the kids who can. I mean, it gets way far removed from the kids who have and have not. It's literally they can or they cannot. So that's part of the problem that kind of upset us. And there seems to be an assault on all of this, right, in the public schools, because now the University of North Carolina system no longer has the requirement of foreign language for admission. Well, that's devastating because now no kid is going to take Spanish 1 because it's not, the state says it cannot be an honors level class. So now I'm never going to take Spanish, heaven forbid, or any first level foreign language because it opts me out of the game, right? Much less Spanish too. So now, oh my Lord, what are we going to do with these 2 wonderful Spanish teachers we have at the high school? And it doesn't mean that they're not going to have Spanish in college, right? So it's great for them to have those Spanish classes here. So when they get there, they can either opt out or blast through them and it's easy. You know, it pads that GPA a bit. So all of these things are simultaneously happening. And it seems great and magical and wonderful until you really stop and think about what it's doing and how it's negatively impacting the high school.
And forcing kids to take courses they don't want to take.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to keep their GPA where they think it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's not the best thing for these kids. They're not taking the classes that's going to best prepare them for college.
Not.
But they don't, I've had kids say, I don't want to do it, but I don't have a choice. So, and we're not talking about limiting the number of courses they can take. We're talking about limiting the number of those college classes because they are weighted at the top. We're talking about limiting the number of those classes that will be calculated in their GPA.
Yeah, and that's on this sheet. This is something that we talked about today. It's just further kind of explaining what we're doing. The yellow parts are the parts we added today on the second sheet. So the game sort of incentivizes students to find a way to take more college courses than their classmates in order to get to the top. We've created a system that panders to students and families that know how to play the game, which creates an inequitable playing field. Already said all that. So the proposal is this. Rising 9th and 10th graders will not take CCP classes that will calculate for GPA or honors credit. Okay? It will not count for in their GPA or for honors credit. Our babies. It doesn't mean that they cannot take those classes. We're not telling them they can't. So what winds up happening if they do is that it will show up on our transcript, on the Polk County High School transcript, Psych 101. They'll get a P, which is a neutral effect to their GPA. It doesn't hurt them, it doesn't help them, okay? The good news, what they will get though, the incentive for doing this is if their parents want this, is they will have a transcript from the community college that says, boo-boo, took 17 CCP classes and made straight A's in every single one of them. Well, good for them. That is a great thing to put in your college packet, all your applications, all your things. That's going to impress everybody to death. But it protects our school. It protects the notion of that liberal arts education for these children. It protects our teachers. And it protects what we're trying to do over there. I mean, think about it. Everybody raves about the farm in FFA, right? I mean, it's like a gold standard thing at the high school. I'm telling you people, you can ask Chauncey Barber, it is affecting FFA. It is, all of this. And so it's getting everybody nervous, like what do we do and how do we stop the hemorrhage, right? So we're gonna limit the number of CCP courses that count in a student's GPA. We're gonna say they can take 8 courses for a total of 24 hours. Now remember, right now they can take 72. Okay, so we're gonna try to limit it to 24. Additional courses can be taken beyond this number, but would not count in the student's GPA, would be a grade of P. The students would no longer be allowed to take CCP courses to replace high school graduation required courses. So if Michelle wants to take U.S. history,
History 131 and 132.
at ICC, no, you cannot do that. You're going to take American history at Polk County High School by one of the history teachers that we have there. So that is one of the things that we, again, to protect our teachers, our classes, what we've got going on. What we're selling over there, I think, is way more important than what ICC is trying to do in 8 weeks. So that's sort of where we're kind of manipulating all of this. Anyway, lastly, we would propose that taking CCP courses during the summer should not count on the student's GPA calculations either. Back to what I said before. If you don't have a mom or a dad or an older sister or brother that can drive you to Blue Ridge or to Forest City all summer and pad your stuff, then you're outside the game. It opts you out immediately. So that's why we're thinking about that too. We believe implementing this with the rising junior class can be done without giving any students an unfair advantage. Billy and Megan went through and looked to make sure that nobody was above this threshold already, this 22-hour threshold. So we could go ahead and pull the trigger there. We kind of went back and forth. Should we wait to start in the 10th grade or whatever? But we talked to a couple of people and said it's probably better just to pull the Band-Aid off this thing because the people that are going to be unhappy are going to be no matter what you do. That makes sense to me. The second issue regarding the CCP classes is clear. Taking 8-week community college classes does not prepare students for the rigor of university classes as well as our AP and honors classes at the high school. The 8-week model is a way for the community college to pad their numbers, and they earn EFT, is that what they're called? EFTs?
FTEs, full-time equivalents, it's okay.
Thank you. And, kids will always say what they say, but I do think the common thread is, and especially for kids like these kids who are opting out of this game, the classes are so watered down that the kids feel like they're not getting really anything as a result. So you can take a calculus class, a college calculus class, those of us who took one of those, you can take it in 8 weeks. How? It just doesn't make sense. And then if you make an A and you go to NC State, that A travels right there with you. So me and you and all of our kids who didn't take that, they're going to struggle and beat their head against the wall for a semester. So it's an interesting predicament we find ourselves in. Withdrawals. This was another really tricky thing. We found a couple of places where if a kid withdraws from a CCP class, they get an F. That makes me real nervous. Here's why we feel like we have to have some sort of withdrawal plan. On these 8-week classes, a student can drop a class in the 7th week of the class with no penalty. They get a W. Okay? So that does two things. One, Billy said it today, and I think it's 100% true. We don't have kids dropping these classes because they're failing them. We have kids dropping because they're getting a B or a C, and it's going to decimate their rank, so they drop because they're not getting an A. 1B or 1C trashes the whole operation. So they're moving along, and then when they realize they have a B or C, they're not willing to gamble that in the next week or two that they're going to be able to pull that up to an A, so they drop it. Well, we don't have anything for that right now. So we say that they should probably get from us, we feel they should get from us a W, just like they're getting at the community college. Once again, it doesn't hurt or help them, right? It doesn't change their GPA or their class rank or any of that kind of stuff. But I do think it is an incentive for them to be careful what they're signing up for.
It would be one of their 8 classes.
And it would consider one of their 8 classes that will be on. And colleges are going to see that transcript and see those W's on there. So hopefully that will keep everybody a little bit more mindful of what we're registering for and what we think we're doing with these CCP classes. So I know that's a lot and it's kind of convoluted, but if you have any questions, they are experts that can answer them.
I think too, Mr. Chair, from just a procedural standpoint, principals grade and classify. That's their role, not the board's role, not the superintendent's role. Principals grade and classify students. So in other words, Ms. Bean gets to determine what courses come in and are put on that transcript and which ones aren't. And I think in talking with the curriculum committee, we had several different times we mentioned, is this really doing what's right for students? Allowing them to take, if you talk to ICC and they were honest with you, they will tell you these 8-week courses were designed for students who are not in high school. They're adult students who are having a hard time making a 16-week course and passing. So it's almost two different, purposes or intentions from the community college. So are we going to have kids so blindly chasing that GPA that they're not getting the experience and the preparation they need at the high school level, which I would argue is not the right thing to do for kids? Or can we set up some reasonable guardrails for kids taking these college courses with the understanding that we're not limiting the amount of credit they can earn? They can earn as much credit as they want. We're only going to allow 24 hours of that to be put on their transcript. And that will make it consistent across every student in the school. So a more level playing field for the GPA chase, if you will. But I don't want to speak for the curriculum committee. I know that we had a long discussion that evening, so anything y'all want to add?
I think we felt it was so important that we actually prepare students for college. It doesn't do them any good to take easy classes and then they can't hack it in college. That we're not doing them any favors letting them do this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say they took 12 courses.
Yes.
How do you pick which 8 count on the GPA?
The first 24 credit hours they get, they're hours. Anything after that, right? We circled back to that a few times. And we just figured it would be easier for everybody. And it's all going to be in a document that we'll type up. Mom has to sign, dad has to sign, kid has to sign, everybody signing. And they understand that those first 24 hours are the ones.
And
So
the
that document goes to all students, just students who are taking?
All students, everybody. Because we want, and
Everybody
what's
needs to
great
know
about this
everything.
24 hours is now everybody can opt in. No one will be left out. So anybody who wants to do it, you can take 24 hours if that is something you choose to do and you want to work hard to do it.
The appealing thing for me too, or for us, who've been in the game a little bit at the high school level, is knowing that now you can get back to some intentional conversations about what are your future plans for your life?
Correct.
And are we really preparing you for that? And I can tell you for a fact, college graduates come back and they'll let you know real quick, they learn more leadership in FFA, taking one of those horticulture or agriculture classes than they ever learned in one of these community college classes. And so again, it's more about, are we doing the right thing for kids and preparing them for life? Certainly you got to know how to play the game, and we're not taking all of that away from them. They can still get all the credits they want.
Sure.
It's just we're trying to make it less GPA chasing.
Listen, I've been a parent mired in this for
We
the last
want to
5
hear
years.
your-
I mean, so I'm 1000% support of it. I mean, it really is something that needs to happen. The kids are not, they're not going after the right thing. You know, it's just this GPA game. They're just chasing that, trying to see how high they can boost their rank. And it's not about their education. So,
And the rules of the game have forced them into that.
yes.
Yeah.
It's not.
Well, certainly they're doing what they think's best for their kid, yeah.
They're saying, I would rather take these classes, but I can't afford to. And then the ones that are stubborn and say, you know what, I'm not doing that. I'm not gonna learn anything. They're ranked 25 in the class.
Are there schools that take an opposite stance from this? Are there schools that are sort of helping that or encouraging that whole kind
I
of?
will say that I talked to Renee Collins in Rutherford County a couple of times about this, and I just spoke to her, was it last week? Did we talk to her? Yeah, I can't remember. And she has brought it up a couple of times to their school board. And she said the problem that they seem to be having right now is that they have a lot of parents on the school board whose kids are embedded in all of this. So now's not the time for them to do it. But I think they know it's coming. And for the same reason, I think that everybody has become clear on the impact that this is making in their schools. Forget, and I mean, let's be selfish for a minute. Let's pretend like this wasn't decimating the kids' experience in high school. It is going to absolutely negatively impact the high school. Period.
Said CTE is going to be
All of our electives,
decimated
absolutely.
if this keeps on.
Absolutely.
Also an AP course because
Uh-huh.
But it's gonna hit your smaller schools more than your bigger ones.
Sure.
Because you don't have the economy of scale and you've got a lot of overlap with students there.
Uh-huh.
Not that I like bringing up the name, but Thomas Jefferson does have a policy because they are very much a college preparatory classical academy type model. And so they've already done things around this.
Listen to what they do. They're, Megan,
So they're on a 7-period day. And they are allowed to take one, like study hall or independent study is what they call it. They could take up to 4 ICC classes during that time. It's the same thing we do, 4 over a full year. But they only count 1 on their transcript.
So
They don't even
schools are
put the
doing
other
this.
ones on there.
And they're gonna have to continue to move to it, I think, if you're gonna keep this comprehensive high school model in place.
I had a rising junior that was going to take some classes this summer that it will absolutely negatively impact him as far as what he was trying to do. So, and I'm still telling him I'm in favor of it because I don't like that whole thing where they're, you know, he doesn't want to take classes during the summer. But guess what? His mom was telling him he needed to. Because he
Right.
needed to-
For
he had
sure.
a couple of grades that he needed to try and nix off of his, you know, off his GPA as best he could with some college coursework. So,
Mhm.
and I'm not knocking him away, please.
Mhm.
I totally
Yeah.
understand what she's trying to do.
For sure. And I get all of it. I really, truly
Yeah,
do.
right.
And I understand why parents are pushing and pushing and pushing because the system is set up that it sort of requires that, if that's the ultimate goal, right?
these four-year colleges, the other thing that's going on is they're figuring out ways, they have to accept the credits.
Right.
But they're figuring out ways to say, oh yeah, you get all these credits, you come to Chapel Hill, but in your degree program, instead of this history class, you need this one. So that's one of your courses for an elective, but you still got to do this and that, and the other thing. What we're finding as a general rule about one semester's worth, which is 15 hours, is what's actually helping them maybe get out of college a semester. They are not gonna let those kids go walking in there and say, oh, okay, you're a second semester junior, so that money that we're gonna get for 4 years, we're just gonna get it for a year and a half.
Well, it's about two things for them too. First of all, money makes decisions, people. You can say what you want, but they're gonna find a way to get their money. They're not gonna stop getting money. But even for them, my son ended up taking accounting over again. He took accounting 1 at ICC. And then he figured out going to UNC Charlotte and starting an accounting 2, going, oh my Lord, it was not the same. And so he had to go back, and the colleges know that too. They're not gonna have a person going out there to take, the CPA exam not prepared. So they're gonna make you take courses they feel like are gonna prepare you versus accepting your 8-week college credit.
Correct.
So again, there's another reason for, let's get this right.
And Brandon just reminded me of something that's important too. If we have kids who want a CCP diploma, they just want all their classes, then that would bolster the ADM at the early college.
That's what I was gonna end with, is if you have
I mean,
parents and kids that really
We got a
want-
place for you to be.
Right, they really want to go down that road. The early college has all those waivers. They can take college classes starting as freshmen. They get them an associate's degree, which the whole associate's degree at that point transfers. That's the place you go if you can do nothing in college. That's why we have it. And so you're seeing this not only impacts your high school and your comprehensive offerings, it's also impacting your early college. And I do believe that ICC, and I'm not going to try to, again, I don't want to be disparaging. They're trying to do what they need to do to help their people out. But I'm not sure all the stuff they're offering necessarily should be offered to kids in the 9th and 10th grade who aren't early college students. So they could have an accreditation visit and pull all this away anyway. But at the end of the day, I wanted you guys to understand what we're talking about. Ms. Bean has to make that decision as a principal. Certainly the board could write a policy if you felt strongly enough to do that, to govern those particular decisions. But at the end of the day, we felt like we needed to put something together and get down this road. So they want to know your input. I think hearing not only from the committee, but hearing from all you guys as a board was important to them. So please ask us questions, shoot it down, because if not, I think we're going to go down this road.
100% on board with it.
Yep.
Because you all are the ones that have to hear about it out in the
That's right.
wild. So I wanted everybody to kind
so
of,
people understand what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And you guys can tell people when you go out there, your kid can still take as many courses as they want. It's just 24 are going to count. 24 hours will be the only ones count on their transcript in high school. Go ahead, Jim.
I can honestly say, going back to college at a later time, classes that I took at isothermal, they were not, I had to retake them at Monterey because they didn't accept them. And so there, I spent all that money taking those classes and then they didn't transfer. So you have to make sure, even if you take classes at isothermal, that they're going to transfer with you for whatever college. So you have to look 4 years ahead. If you're doing it right after high school. And so, yeah, it's.
I do want to make it clear one more time. We are not disparaging isothermal community college. They actually try to be all things to all people, sometimes like we do, and it's tough to do that. So don't, for a lot of people, that's a great institution. It does a lot of great things for us and for them. So this is not a knock on ICC. It's just we've gotten off the track with our high school kids.
And I have a child who, well, adult now, who applied to schools as ranked number 1 in the class. And then I was concerned whether or not they would be able to graduate. They pushed so hard, like they weren't going to make it over. They weren't going to make it over the finish line.
And you want a kid having a realistic picture of how they're going to do. You take all these ICC classes, you're making A's in them, they're not very hard. And then you get to the university level and you start smacking your face against the board, you're going to quit. And that's not what we want either. Anyway, if you're okay with Mr. Chair, I'd love to tell Ms. Bean to proceed if it doesn't.
I'm like you, I'm 100% for it. Yeah. I think 1 year is too late.
That's right. Would it be appropriate for Ms. Bean to have something kind of crafted and finalized, and then maybe if we can get it to our June 27th meeting, kind of let y'all see that real quick at that point? Is that okay with everybody?
so do you want like the form that we'll send home?
Yeah, in fact, if you have the wording already that you've got the form or what you're going to put in your handbook, I think that'd be good so that they know exactly what the wording is. And then we can reinforce that discussion about it. Parents call them with concerns so they can answer those questions too.
Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Here we go. All right.
Ms. Transfer, Ms. Malden, Ms. Bean, thank you for what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Casey. Thank you.
Yeah, he's got
After this summer.
this summer.
Oh, okay, you can do it this summer.
Yeah, well, we had
Still have
kids,
a bath.
well, we did decide
I'm
that
sorry.
today, because we have kids who have already registered and started.
Tell him I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Nope, no sorries.
Thank you,
Thank you
Steve.
again, folks.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much for your time.
All right, folks, now moving under administrative, we've got, first up, budget amendment, Ms. Debbie Lovelace.
Okay, in your package was got budget amendment number 7. You'll have like one more left, I think. So that'll be at the end of June. But, on there, we had additional revenue of $81,993. This is an example where we received like $40-some thousand for developmental day, like last week. So here it is at the end of the year, and we get $40-some thousand for developmental day people. So I'm moving people in there now to use that up, because it has to be spent by the end of June. So, we also got another $40-some thousand from the state, because whenever they did the allotments earlier this year, the increases, they did not give us the, all the retirement portion of those salaries that we were really entitled to. So now they're going back and giving us that, which I'm not gonna complain, it's more money. So
But not good timing.
some finance officers were complaining. I'm like,
Don't complain.
$40-some thousand, I can use it. So basically that's what the $88,000 was for. Also in, capital, about $20,530 was for capital projects. Already money we requested and received that. And also in Fund 8, additional revenues of $136,833. That was some E-rate that we'll be getting. That is for Brandon's program. Some Go grants that we got, and some Facebook grants, and Polk County Community Foundation grants. Yeah, so $136,833 there. So it's all good, all additional revenues. I always take more money. I can use it.
Even this time of year, right?
Yes.
Any questions from Ms. Lovelace? This is an actionable item. We'll be looking for a motion and a second for approval.
I move that we accept the budget amendments as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have the end of year budget resolution. Mr. Green.
Mr. Chair, this is the resolution we always pass in June so that Ms. Lovelace can make changes and adjustments right up until the last day of the fiscal year. For us, a very standard agreement, and you guys have always approved it. Happy to answer any questions about that, but I appreciate the flexibility allowed Ms. Lovelace to make sure we get all the money in the right spots.
Any questions? Once again, it's an actionable item. We'll be looking for a motion and a second for approval.
So moved. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion also carries 7-0. Next, we have errors and omissions. Ms. Debbie Lovelace.
Okay, this is where your insurance for this next year, we have to have it to, at this time of the year, so that I can get the payment made and everything is expected on July 1st. So this is the board's, insurance, errors and omissions.
Anybody not want to approve that?
It's a very small amount to pay.
For what it covers.
Okay, for what it covers.
Absolutely.
Just don't call it insurance.
Yeah, I know they call it
Purchase
insurance. It's not
insurance, I don't
really
know.
insurance.
That's why it's structured.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we accept the errors and omissions.
I second.
All right, and that motion, we have a second, Mr. Parsons. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Do we want to take the student transfer request into closed session, or is this pretty straightforward, folks?
Dr. Schweitzer?
This was pretty straightforward.
I agree.
I
agree.
I said we go ahead and approve it.
Sounds good.
I move we approve the student transfer.
second.
All right, motion and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have bid approvals. Dr. Brandon Schweitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 3 projects we're pursuing this summer that all fall into our micro purchasing. Am I saying that right, Debbie? In terms of needing board approval, they exceed $30,000. I'm going to start with 2 of them that are going to be linked to the Safe Schools money that we received, the recent grant funding. The first is a camera server bid. This is essentially a bid to replace the heart and soul of our security camera equipment throughout our entire district. We have for years just piecemealed our security cameras together the best we can. This would unify our entire system under a singular server and put us on a footing really to be able to move into the future with what we did at early college with some AI technology on board, some recognition for, being able to do searches for looking for someone with a suit jacket on or someone with a red ball cap or even license plate tags and out in parking lots, those kinds of things. So we went out, we had two companies come back with a bid on this, one from Encore, one from Mobile Communications America. Encore was the low bid in this particular one. Encore's legal team really enjoys their packet, and there's a lot of documentation here. We'll get on down to the actual numbers. Low bid for this particular project was $61,896.34. Again, this amount is coming from that Safe Schools funding that we received recently. So there's that one. Mr. Green, if you want, I'll continue on, just present all of them. Is that appropriate?
I think so.
Show all of them.
Mr.
Chair. All right, thank you.
And while he's switching, I will tell you that this consolidation is badly needed if we're going to be able to use the cameras and utilize the features they have. It's badly needed.
Our second bid that went out was for another Safe Schools item. This is our school radios. 2 different groups bidding on this one, Kimball Communications and again, Mobile Communications America. A little bit of a spin on this one that's an interesting twist. Sort of 2 different platforms. This is like if you're going out to buy a computer and one said, here, I'll sell you an Apple or a Mac computer, and the other one said, I'll sell you a PC. Benefits, pros and cons. In this particular case, Kimball Communication was the low bid that came back. And their number for replacing all of our handheld radios across the entire district was $89,930. What this does, replacing all of our handhelds, is it moves it to completely digital radio systems, and it unifies us on the same communication platform with our county. Our county uses Kenwood products, which means we would have seamless ability to be able to jump between channels and then unify our buses, which are all running currently Kenwood digital radios. That was a purchase we made this past year on the repeated towers off the mountain, and be able to switch over to emergency personnel at any point in time. It also allows us to be able to trade equipment. So if as the county is onboarding new equipment and wants to donate equipment to us, which they have talked about and offered, we would be able to integrate that immediately as we move forward. So again, this is bringing us into the future. All of our current radio systems are just standard VHF, UHF compliant radios. These are true digital radio systems. We have been piloting one of these at our high school recently. We had one individual stand in the boiler room. If you've ever been on campus, in the back corner of the building, back where the English hall is, it's kind of tucked away where the exit is, where the teachers are. Boiler room, back corner. That's as much cinder block and machinery as you can get around you. Other individual went down to the weight room on the back side of the gym. So the furthest points on campus with as much stuff in between the 2 of you, and it sounded like you were standing side by side talking to one another. Digital radio technology is truly impressive. It's truly the wave of the future. So this, yet again, fixes a badly needed digital or safety infrastructure area for us that we've just sort of piecemealed together all the years the best we can. Now we have this funding, puts us on a platform for being able to move into the future. So this was that particular low bid. The other bid that came in, the caveat I told you that's a little bit different with this, is that Mobile Communications was proposing a Motorola option.
Motorola would put us on a different platform, which would not have all those interconnectivity features to be able to connect with the county. They did come in, I think, at around 103,000, so it was a little bit higher bid in the end. But you miss out on some of that interconnectivity with the county. So there's those two pieces.
Does the Campbell, does it include sales tax?
It includes sales tax and
So
everything.
it's under the 90?
It is under the 90. You got it.
It's key in the day.
Yeah, that's a key.
So the final bid is not connected to Safe Schools, but equally important, we've got some real furniture needs all throughout our district in terms of desks, cafeteria tables, all those kinds of things. Here at the end of the year, I know a lot of you get out on site to attend award ceremonies and go to various events all throughout our schools. You'll see one area in particular is our cafeteria tables. Those are usually really expensive items that we don't purchase very often. We get our mileage out of those tables, and it's about time for us to replace many of them throughout several of our elementary schools at this point in time. We're also running a little short on student desks in terms of replacing some of the ones that are damaged, those kinds of pieces. So low bid for this one, we went out to 3 different groups: School Specialty, Virco, and Worthington Direct. Really interesting one here. Worthington quoted Virco products. We won't get into that. That was really so Virco Direct, I went ahead and consolidated their information into this. This is the low bid overall for all of the items we ordered, $70,149. This one, when you get down into it, it covers, going by memory now, around 150 elementary age desks, 75 high school desks, 10 cafeteria tables total. And I think that's the sum total of all the furniture we were looking to do. All of these items will be spread throughout the majority of our elementary schools, with the exception of the 75 high school desks that were being delivered on that end. So again, some much needed furniture improvements on the capital side.
Questions for Dr. Schweitzer? Again, what's the furniture going to be coming from? Where's that going to get funded from?
That one will be coming from local capital.
Yep. All right. Good. Any other questions? If it is an actionable item, we'd be looking for a motion in a second for approval.
I move that we approve the the bids as presented.
I second.
All right, I have a motion in a second. Is there any further discussion? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Last thing under administrative, Mr. Green, we have the Henderson Polk agreement for intercounty transfer.
Actually, got some policy updates.
I'm sorry. Policy updates, Dr. Schweitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Policy updates are going to be broken into 2 categories. I think I'll start with the one that's still top of mind right now, since we just heard from our high school administrative team and jumped down here to class rank. You heard reference that one of the policies we would need to adjust refers to that ranking system. I'm going to jump to the new policy, which I've highlighted on this, and the changes that do take effect. In our old or existing policy, there are GPA breakpoints, so just specific GPA allotments that are the breaks between each one of the honor systems or honors categories. This puts those percentage points that are proposed by Ms. Bean and her team in place. It also sets that it will become effective with the class of 2025. So that is this year's rising seniors. This will go into effect for those Latin honors. So there's the policy change for the Latin honor systems. Any questions about that? And we'll jump into the other 3 policies quickly.
How will this affect the letter that Ms. Bean's gonna write up for our next meeting? Do we need to wait on this?
You won't, because this is just the magna cum laude, magna cum laude, summa cum laude. It's just the honor graduate piece. Has nothing to do with the college coursework.
Okay.
Yeah, the college coursework and the shift to quarters are administrative changes. They're not policy changes. This one is in policy for where the Latin honors break.
That's why we got you guys to.
So hearing no questions on the class ranking piece, the other 3 are 3 that I've been working on in the realm of artificial intelligence. We assembled a team of teachers representing each one of our schools together to help us with some policy feedback on how we venture into this brave new world of AI. We've had several board members actually attend some of our AI conferences and really dive into how generative artificial intelligence is going to impact the work we do in public education and what it means for our students. We now live in a world where, you know, out of your Forbes top 100, you have many of those top companies that are saying point blank, I need you to have real world productive skills in navigating ChatGPT. We as public educators are in no better place than to teach kids how to engage with these things. And here's the key part, in a responsible way. So you're going to see as we dive into some of these policy adjustments, these are recommendations from the North Carolina School Board Association. There is very little modification on the policy side that has been recommended to us by NCSBA. They put all these recommendations out fairly recently. What you are going to see from us internally is a lot of development on guidelines on how we actually implement and put these things out. And that's what that policy team is going to be helping us as we move forward. So the first one I want to dive into is technology and educational program. Again, I will go to the new and proposed policy on first reading. If it's not highlighted, that means it is still the same as we have had in the existing policy. The big change comes down here. There's a whole new category that is dedicated specifically to generative artificial intelligence. It defines it, it provides parameters for it, it talks about board's expectations for how it'll be used in a responsible way, and it sets upon the shoulders of the administrative team the obligation to provide training for not just students, but for our staff. So we're going to have to implement some pretty stringent training on responsible use, how all those pieces go into effect, responsible use for our kids, which I'm going to talk about in a second in another policy, but all of these in terms of the AI implementation. So bouncing out of that one, I'm going to hit the other one that's a fairly easy, straightforward one. I'm going to jump to policy 4310. So one of the big questions that has come up on our policy development team is generative artificial intelligence is generating something new. It doesn't exist anywhere prior. Is that plagiarism? If you are plagiarizing a machine that is generating something new for the first time ever. It's causing all of us to really grapple with this idea. The best way I heard it described was, well, yeah, by the most technical terms, that's not plagiarizing, but it doesn't feel good. So lots of people are saying it's disingenuous for you to be simply putting in a prompt into ChatGPT, taking what it produces, and then passing it off as your own. So this particular policy 4310 addresses that head on. And there's one very small change to plagiarizing. Plagiarizing, including copying the language, structure, idea, and or thought of another person or of work produced by artificial intelligence and representing it as one's own original work. So, in other words, it's coming headlong at this idea of if your teacher did not intend for you to use generative AI and you simply took cold turkey what it produced for you and attempted to pass it off as your own without giving credit. Now, if you said, hey, I use artificial intelligence to assist me in developing this product, if you cited it and that was okay with your teacher, that's not plagiarizing. If you simply took it and tried to pass it off as your own writing, then that, under this definition, would be considered a lack of academic integrity. Does that make sense? This is a weirdly complex topic for people to dive into.
It's a pretty fine distinction.
Yes, yes. It's amazing how just that little sentence added there can change that complexity a little bit there. And did you ever think several years ago that sentence would be needed?
Well, as Dr. Schweitzer said, the burden's on us because not only are you going to have to get your kids instructed and educated on when the use of that type of tool is appropriate, you also got to help your teachers understand how to recognize that and how to look for it. And how do you get kids to, well, how do you do things like oral questioning or Socratic type of methods or experiential learning where they have to be there physically giving it back to you versus sending them a simple question and answer sheet and go home and type into AI. So those are things we have to train our teachers.
So real quickly, I know several of our board members have heard this training before, but just for the broader board, one topic I'm really pushing with some of the initial trainings I've been discussing with teachers is plagiarism AI detectors. In other words, products that propose to detect AI. Turnitin.com is an example. There's lots of them that are the old plagiarism detectors. I'm here to tell you point blank, they do not work with any level of efficacy. So they only have about a 50% efficacy in identifying artificial intelligence. I did a demonstration with our teachers just a couple weeks ago where I plugged in cold turkey for it to write me a report on, I can't remember what topic it was. And it just produced maybe a page and a half paper on that particular topic, cut and paste it directly into a AI detector and misspelled one word intentionally, changed the spelling. And the AI detector said, nope, this is not AI, it looks great. Do you know why it passed it? because artificial intelligence does not make technical errors, technical writing errors. So by simply making that one twist, I'm 40 years old and I figured it out. What do you think our kids are figuring out? It's pretty amazing where we are with those pieces. So that's not a tool they can lean into. It's really the relationships they have with kids and knowing their students for identifying that.
Thanks for the heads up on it, because I would have never figured it out.
So this last policy is an interesting one because I came at this policy. This is our technology acceptable use policy. This is the one that traditionally people have turned to for access to the internet and sort of covered you in all things in terms of accessing technology in a school system. I came at this policy with the intent of updating the AI section, and you'll notice there's a lot more highlighted sections that are in there. Our policy had not been updated since 2018. Just a few things in the technology world have changed since then, so I made sure that I hit all of the highlighted areas with some of those changes. I'll roll through those fairly quickly. Down here, you see a section that talks about just in general appropriate behavior, and failure to adhere to this policy can and will mean that you are revoked from access on our network, some of those pieces, which we had in place prior, but it's a little bit different wording, so that's a change. Down here a little bit further, there was a specific provision that talked about that you are not to use our school's technological resources for amusement or entertainment purposes. Evidently, they needed to include unless approved by a special situation by the teacher. That's another area that was recommended for addition. Down here, users must follow any software application subscription service terms and conditions. You may not realize it. This item number 4, this terms and conditions, is actually linked to artificial intelligence. Here's why. All of these AI tools have different terms of service agreements. ChatGPT says point blank, you must be at least 13 years old to use it. So that is ChatGPT's version. If you look at School AI, which is a very different product curated just for schools, School AI says that you can be a minimum age of 8 years old to use it. So with all these products coming on board with various terms and service agreements, we needed to be able to be in a position to say that you will adhere to those service agreements across the board. Down here, users must not circumvent our firewalls. Well, I guess we need to explicitly say that. Down here a little further, this is preventing students or saying explicitly that you are not to use school equipment to capture audio, video, or still pictures without another person's consent. Down here, it talks about if you are using our network for streaming audio or streaming video, basically chewing up our bandwidth for any reason that's not appropriate as well. We make every effort to block these types of activities from our students. It is very rare that they're able to actually get to stream anything whatsoever. But this outlines point blank that if you are running a streaming service of any kind, that is not permitted. Down here, it is the user's responsibility to back up any data. So at the end of the day, if you're a user on our network, yes, we do backups nightly, but that's ultimately not our sum total responsibility. It's you as the end user should be backing up your data. This particular item addresses any user that has been issued a device. That could be a student or it could be a staff member that's issued a device, basically saying that is a school-owned device, and as such, you are being held to all of the acceptable use policies that go along with that. Down here, this privacy section, this is actually attached to the Parents' Bill of Rights, where it then addresses a specific area that talks about that your data on our network can and will be released to law enforcement if you are suspected of a crime. So all of that access to that information is out there. Users may not use a private Wi-Fi hotspot or personal technology on campus to access the internet outside of the school system's wireless networks. This is being done because hotspots are now so prevalent and so cheap, they can degrade your Wi-Fi access when you have several of them popping up. Now, if you'll recall, a couple of years ago, our school system was able to invest with E-rated money, some very, very nice access points. These things that look like little spaceships hanging from the ceiling. They do a good job of suppressing what they call rogue signals, but it does hurt our network when we have a whole bunch of hotspots that pop up at one time. So that's able to, that is a provision citing that you should not be using that on school grounds. Employees should not be using personal websites, Snapchat, Instagram, WeChat, any of those types of things to engage with students in any capacity. You would think that would be common sense. Unfortunately, it needs to be in policy. And then down here, we get into our use agreements. We are obligated under this new policy to inform all of our parents annually of this acceptable technology usage agreement and of our AI policies. So that will go out as a part of our annual reporting. So all of that to get to this last section that talked about that we would update parents in our community on our AI policies and guidelines. And like I said, I did not anticipate that there would be some of these other changes that were present throughout that acceptable use policy, but it did need updating. It had been since 2018 since we had approached that one. Any questions about that policy? It's a lot of different areas. That's a big one.
Mr. Chair, I know our typical stance on policies is usually have the policy committee look at it, but I encourage Dr. Schweitzer to move forward given what they had discussed. And if you look at the changes, they are pretty much related to AI. So we thought it was straightforward, easily understandable. Again, this would be first reading. You still have the month to look at it until we take a formal adoption. It's something I do think needs to be in place before we start reading it.
I agree. I think that needs to be in place for sure. I'm glad we're moving forward with it. So.
It's here and it's gonna stay.
Deal with it.
When would this information go out to the parents?
Beginning of the year.
Beginning of the year. Yeah, and that's part of the
All
impetus
this
for
will hit at the
getting
same
this going.
In the immense packet of information we already have out there. So, yeah.
All right, folks, this would be an actionable item. We'll be looking for a motion and a second for approval on first reading.
So moved.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? There being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Now we'll go to the Henderson-Polk agreement for intercounty transfer.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, this is our annual agreement with Henderson County that relates to the Saluda area and the agreement we have with them for students who live in that area to be able to choose whether they go to Henderson County schools or Polk County schools. It has benefited both districts over time and certainly the families that live up there, so we would strongly recommend adoption again of this agreement.
I'll make a motion that we accept the Hendersonville Polk agreement for the inter-county transfers.
I second.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0. Moving now under old business, the first thing we have here is the Polk County High School paving phase 2. Dr. Schweitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At our May meeting, we talked about the stance we were in regarding the proposed paving project for phase 2, the area of paving back behind Polk County High School and down and around all of the ball fields. At that particular meeting, we cited all of the potential factors that were impacting this project, namely being the time crunch, the scope of the project being a significant one. It wasn't a simple tear up the asphalt and then repave existing. That was only a portion of the project. The bulk of the project was actually, for lack of a better way to describe it, road construction. Actually building the roads out in a correct and engineered way to be able to take care of things like drainage, carry load capacity, all those different pieces back behind the high school. When we put this out for our initial bid, as I shared with the board, we only had 2 bids that came back. Under formal bidding policy, you need at least 3 bids to be able to open the bids to review them. Because only 2 came in, the bids were returned sealed back to the bidders. So we never got to see numbers on the first round. We came to the board to express that, to say that we had several different options we could pursue in terms of how to proceed. The board at that meeting elected to move forward with a rebid on the project. Rebidding then allows for, as long as it's the same project, which in this case it is, that you get to waive that minimum 3 bids. So on the second round of bidding, even if you have 1 bidder, you're allowed to then open and review the bids at that point in time. So as we move forward, we did go to second bidding. Those bids came in, and you had 2 bidders this last go around. You had Site Development Corporation and Tar Heel Paving came in. I've broken out the bids in the demolition phase, the actual paving and site work, and there were 2 alternates that are in this project. In my humble opinion, one of the alternates really shouldn't be an alternate because it's a necessity. That is the drainage work up and around the CTE area. That is a terrible area for carrying water. And I feel like that if we're going to pave, we absolutely need to address that particular spot. So alternate 1 is the drainage around the CTE area. Alternate 2 really is a sort of elective. That was to spruce up our football stadium area. So from the gate inward, that was a reseal and recoat. professionally of that entire surface area. When we reviewed the project, we talked about that asphalt being in fairly good shape. It didn't really need a repave, but we could more or less do without that portion. As you'll see, it's not a large sum of money when you're talking about the sum total amounts that we're approaching. When you do formal bidding, your base bid is how they award low bidder. So Tar Heel on just the base without the two alternates was $630,984. $630,984. Even adding in the alternates, they were still lower than their competitor for this particular project. The final piece of this is talking about some of our capital project planning that we have going on for the coming year. We have several capital projects laid out for this upcoming season. And I know this is small writing and sort of hard to see, but I wanted you to get just a little bit of a taste of several of the different things that we were planning as we move forward. Cancel this. So the reason I'm presenting this particular slide is because we experienced a bit of a shift in terms of how we were laying this particular project out. Number one, the bids came in a little bit more expensive than what we anticipated. The engineer's estimates when we started this was $550,000. To be completely transparent with you, the information we had said that engineers' estimates typically were a little bit on the high side. We were anticipating somewhere around that total to come back in. And when we saw these particular numbers, it was significantly higher than I think what we were prepared for. The factors that I think sort of drove that were really the time crunch, were really the turnaround time in terms of how quickly you could mobilize somebody to get them out there. And really the construction of the road is the biggest chunk to this. The paving portion of the project is not super complicated. It's the road construction and drainage piece, I think, that's going to take the largest amount of time and is incurring the most expense. And looking at all these other capital projects, I won't go through all of them line item by line item. I'll simply say this. We have different pots of money that we're able to pull from for a lot of our capital planning. We have our regular lottery fund. We have our repair and renovations fund. Before I move on from those two lottery sources, the regular capital lottery fund does have annual distributions that are recurring amounts by general statute. Those amounts vary depending on lottery sales, all those kinds of things, but we do get recurring regenerative funds back in that account. Repair and renovations is a relatively new lottery fund. It has only been around for the last, I'd say, 3 years, Debbie, is that correct? It's sort of a question mark on, are we going to get that money? How much money comes? There's not a whole lot of information. It's just, hey, money appeared in that account, or maybe you don't get it this year. For right now, we have been leveraging that repair and renovations account that has to be specifically spent on buildings that house classrooms. In other words, you cannot use that repair and renovations money for something like a paving project. So there's some stipulations attached to those two funds. The final two funds are our regular capital amount that we get annually from the county. And then also our sales tax set aside is also produced as a part of general statute with our county that we're able to lean into. So those are your 4 core funding sources that you can really pull from when you're trying to budget for projects. Anything outside of that would be a special project request that we would have to make of the county, or lean into a grant of some kind, or some other funding source. As you can see from this past year, we spent really, I think, around $1.2 million on capital projects all around the district. Did a lot of good for a lot of schools all throughout our district. It's ultimately benefiting our teachers and our students. This coming year, just the ones I have listed, which don't include a lot of the smaller projects, we're anticipating just over $1 million in some of these capital expenditures as we go into this year. At that point, Mr. Green, I think I'll shift the conversation to you to talk a little bit about your engagement with the county and where we stand on that.
Sure, absolutely. One piece I'll add before I do that is something that Dr. Schweitzer would never say to you in a million years, but he's got a lot on his plate this summer. And anytime you're trying to run a project like this through, especially if there's going to have to be, drainage work done, some road work done, you almost have to have, people who can be out there and watching and making sure that things are progressing the right way. Not that those companies wouldn't do a great job, but I just want to say that would add an additional burden to an already very busy summer for Dr. Schweitzer and for Darren Green to keep track of the project. In talking with the county, I know that we had talked before. Again, I do not speak for County Manager Pittman, nor do I speak for the Board of Commissioners, and ultimately they would have to approve whatever funding in addition to the set aside that they might want to give us. We had thrown around numbers like $500,000, and at least one commissioner and Mr. Pittman were open to having that discussion. If I had to put an estimate on what they would be willing to do to help us with this project, it's been pretty clearly stated to me that that would be somewhere between $350,000 and $500,000. That is the range that I received from them in terms of what they could help us out with this year. Doesn't mean we can't go back and ask for more. Doesn't mean that's what their final decision would be. I'm simply telling you what the temperature of the water is right now in this moment in my last conversation with the county manager. Again, I think we would need that. You would have to tap the county. You guys know this for a fact. There was a lot of time we didn't spend a ton of capital money trying to save up for big items like this. Things like the Polk Central Package Plant, in case it goes south, we need to keep money in there. I really don't want to build a whole new septic facility, but that's what we would like to do if something happened out of Polk Central. So I throw that all out to you just to give you an idea of what available funding there would be. And there are, as you know, some other things we've discussed from a budgeting perspective. The shortages we're experiencing from the lack of COVID funding, some of the other unpredictable amounts of money we may or may not get from the state next year that could cause us to have to dip into fund balance. So all those things being said, it's a little precarious, and the higher the price goes for the project, I think the more nervous we get about that. But again, just wanted to tell you where we were at. And Dr. Schweitzer, I think that's it as far as what we have to tell you. And then as you guys know all too well, the discussion now becomes yours as a board on whether or not you wish for us to proceed with the second round of bids. It would appear that Tar Heel Paving would be the one to go forward, giving us the low bid. But again, that's a discussion for you guys to have at this point. We would need to decide something today if you want to have any hope of getting this work done. The other thing I will caution you on, and Mr. Fagan may want to chime in, there was a question about, well, what if we just did the paving portion of it and we didn't do the gravel road, for example? I think that would require a whole new bid process because that's not the scope of the project that you had out there for bids. Mr. Fagan, would that not be accurate?
I would be afraid to change it significantly enough that could be an issue.
Certainly what we felt like in terms of what we've dealt with in the past. So I think, that being an option, certainly we can talk about it, but I think that would cause us to have to rebid because you're going to have local companies that we heard indirectly that part of the obstacle for coming up with a bid quickly was that people in that short amount of time couldn't, I don't want to use a specific paper, but couldn't get a subcontractor, for example, to agree, yes, I can get the drainage work done on this time. I can get the road bed work done on this time, because those pavement companies don't necessarily have all those things in-house. Some of them do, some of them don't. But that was an obstacle, I think, to some of the bids coming in, was that they couldn't get that turned around quick enough to give us an estimate or get it scheduled. So those are all variables I throw out at you. And then please, Mr. Chair, take it away.
I want to say that I need to excuse myself from this conversation.
Did the notice that went out on the bids indicate that the board could accept a portion of it, not the whole thing?
Did not. It indicated that the board could just reject the bids, that they weren't bound to accept the bid as they signed.
All right, folks, time to chat about it. I mean, so I'll tell you what my thoughts are as follows. This came in about $150,000 more than what the engineers told us they thought it would be. Even that we thought was high. Certainly costs of materials and things will go up. They're not going to go up 30% before we bid it again. I don't believe that's even remotely realistic. And then you have the situation where we put this message out to the community that we're going to spend $150,000 more on this project when we need to be looking out for our teachers. And we also have student meal debt that we're going to have this year that's going to total, less than that, but still would take up the majority of it. I think it makes us look horribly fiscally irresponsible to do this project right now, my personal opinion.
So let me ask, when would we do it? I mean, did we forget it?
No, I think you got to try to do it the next year. It gives you a year of time to hopefully get multiple scopes of projects done. So if you had to piecemeal it, you could. It gives us more time to talk with the commissioners in the county about a specific amount of money. But I know where you're headed, Mr. Coleman. You're exactly right. You're just kicking the can down the road. I get it.
It's going to go up. It's not going to get cheap.
Is there a chance for us to be putting something aside to help with this?
No more than we get every year. I mean, it's, again, you're always begging people. You know how much money we get from a capital perspective. I'm towards the end of my career, so I feel comfortable in being a little bit blunt. It's a joke. It's a joke what school systems have received. We haven't had a a state bond since '97. And no offense to the commissioners, they've supported us well over time, but we have 100-year-old high schools serving as elementary schools. And it's just not cheap to keep those going. So you're going to see us vastly underfunded for the next 5 to 10 years, in my opinion.
So when would you bid it again?
I think you bid it early. I think you start the fall and bid it early.
Okay, how many companies gonna hold a bid from October to June? I'm just using October.
Yeah. So where
I
you,
wouldn't, you struggling with it.
Yeah.
We would not.
where you would end up is if you bid the entirety of the project, you'd have to do it sometime November, October, November, somewhere in that window to get out there and try to get on people's schedules early enough to where they could just make you the sole project they were tackling because of the size and scope of this particular endeavor. It also give us time to decide if we wanted to break the project up, if we wanted to do something like just the existing asphalt, to do it for starters. My prediction is that it would come in less than 500,000 on that particular one, which means you're into informal bidding on a road construction. So you're not in these formal bid parameters. That makes it a little more flexible with various paving companies to do that project really straightforward. Tackle the roadbed construction at another time. When that would be something we'd have to plan out with our subcommittees. But it gives us options for having to look at some of those delays on the other end. But yeah, if we're rebidding it in its entirety, it would be sometime in that October to November window.
Which is actually what we heard from several of those companies, that they needed more time. Yeah. Now, you're right on quotes. They probably come back and tell you it's going to have a variance or something like that. But they'd have to. They can't. Can't predict that far out.
I look back at numbers, and maybe I'm wrong, but when we first did this 2 years ago, when we put it out to bid, from the time they actually did it, it went up $100,000. But then when you look back at last year when Tar Heel bid the entire job, I ran out without my notes, I was running late. It was something like $915,000 to do the entirety of the school, right? And we paid them like $392 for what was done.
Yeah,
So they really in a year only went up $150,000 for Tar Heel. And we're adding a tremendous amount of drainage and parking and different things. So I don't think it's that off the wall from what we initially got. Maybe I'm wrong.
Do we have the money? Is the question then. I mean, they're not gonna pay, the county's not gonna pay $180,000 of it. That comes out of our pockets at that point. Again, I go back to my original point. I think we're trying to push this in too fast to try and get it done in a short period of time. I think it's being rushed at this point, and I just don't think it makes good sense to do.
You know, I look back, we started this one last September. Do we really rush it?
Well, we are rushing the project now because it's not in process. Yeah, you're absolutely rushing the project.
And that was for me, the issue was that we already committed for a food deficit. And
We can't use capital pay for that.
No, they're different pockets, but if we've got to go to the community or something like that, or, you know, all of a sudden we're running two big deficits like that.
I didn't answer your question. Yes, we would have the money, but I think you'd be dipping pretty deep into your fund balance. And that would be all dependent on the amount that the county gave you for the project.
How urgent is the project?
I mean, Aaron Green, Brandon Schweitzer, I think anybody that's ever worked at that high school or cares about that high school, it needs to be done yesterday. When you go down to a softball game or, you know, a baseball game, it's dangerous down there. And, you know, you keep putting Band-Aids on it. We keep going down there and fixing ditches and putting gravel and doing all that other things. So yes, it's needed, but is it essential to the day-to-day functioning of Polk County High School? Absolutely not. That back lot is not as in bad a shape as the front lot was. So, you know, does another year really make that much difference? I don't think so, but I'm just as hurt about not getting it done right now as everybody is. I mean, we need it done. We need it done yesterday.
What if it goes up another 100,000? Is this what we faced last time?
Then hopefully again, that's for y'all to discuss. I need to stay out of it.
And then we're
I can
looking at
argue
that
both sides
reimbursement.
all day long. I can argue both sides all
That's
day.
all this work. I mean, you know, we gotta look at what makes sense to do right now.
And trust me when I say the board directs us.
We spent $40,000-$50,000 on an engineer.
Yeah, so I do want to clarify that one timeline portion of the process is when we were in discussions about where to secure funding for getting this off the ground, I think we ended up landed around the December. I have to go back and look at board agenda meetings. I know that I didn't begin like real like, hey, we're meeting with WGLA and we're starting the groundwork for getting them running until around that Christmas time break and then into January. So January was when they were on site rolling with me, talking about engineering specs and building the engineering documents for us. At that time, I was asking our engineering team, which is WGLA is a respected engineering firm in this particular arena. I asked them, I said, hey, I have real concerns about this time frame. Where are we at in the process? Is this going to work out okay for bidding? They expressed to me, yeah, we feel like you're okay, but boy, you're right on the margin. So, I mean, they more or less this whole way around said, we feel like you're in a good spot, but you're right on the margin in terms of bidding. So we sort of jumped in, I would argue, right at the limit of where you would try to do this particular project in terms of timing.
From an engineering standpoint, when you paid for it one time, you got the engineering plans for the
Yes.
project.
So there's no more engineering.
No more.
We wouldn't have to do that again.
Yeah, we had to do that.
I would argue, given the substantive nature of what we're trying to do at the bottom, where the gravel is and where the drainage is of the CTE, what would you needed to do to finish?
For all those practical reasons, and it also allowed you to be flexible and utilize potentially the capital lottery funds. If you're going to dip into that particular reserve, the state mandates that you have that roadway engineer. So okay, we needed it anyway, but it does give flexibility for utilizing those funds.
And make no mistake, we serve at the pleasure of the board. If the board decides we're going down this road, we go down this road, and we'll be hot and heavy at it, and we'll get it done. And we'll figure out where the money has to come from.
Well, this is basically looking at money you don't really even have yet, right?
It would stretch us quite a bit. You
In
know
other
that
words,
as
even
well.
if you're looking at capital, it's
Oh, that's what I'm saying.
capital
It would stretch us. We'd have to
you
dip in.
don't know that you're even getting.
I think we
and
would
the
have to dip
amounts
in,
that you're getting.
depending on what the county does.
To me, that's a lot.
Depending on what the county does.
When would we know what we're getting from the,
I would have to contact Mr. Pittman tomorrow.
No, the lottery.
The lottery. We
No,
don't,
that's quarterly.
you get a quarterly update on that, and that all depends on proceeds.
We'll get another update sometime, July 1.
Where do we stand on lottery money?
We, right now, I can pull the figures for you, but I want to say we're around $480,000 somewhere in our regular capital. Please don't quote me on that. I have to go back and pull it. It's around that amount. But keep in mind, this next slide is banking on using some of these various funds for some of these projects. So I'd have to go and actually do a detailed breakdown on how much it would leave us with if we did all of these things and tackle the roadway at the same time.
Does it tend to vary, or is it pretty solid year in, year out?
The capital lottery varies a little bit year in year. It depends on lottery sales. on
That's
any
what I
given
was
year,
wondering,
right?
how much.
Yeah. Now, there's wild variance in the repair and renovations one. And we've already established that that can't be used for roadway construction, but that one is an unknown variable. Similar variance to unknown variable is our sales tax set aside with the county. It all just depends on sales tax revenue from any given fiscal year. So.
What's the pleasure of the board?
I think we should wait a year. That's where I stand.
My feelings is move forward.
Well, I'd like to move forward, but I don't like to move forward if we don't have the funds. Deplete our fund balance.
I agree with that.
I would like to move forward, but with that list too, of expenditures that we need to do, I'm concerned about moving forward now.
Is there a motion?
How would we word a pause motion? Or
I think you don't, if you're not gonna take action, there's nothing to do. So the only motion that you would need to make is to proceed with the project, I
so we just let that fall aside?
think. Knowing that, yeah, and then you direct us to make sure that we go down this road and we have it ready for next year. But if you're not coming, I don't see the need for a motion unless you're gonna take it around. Got it.
Consensus is wait.
And that we get bids, what did we say, October, November?
we would set that time frame. We've been advised by WGLA to start that process in that time frame, in that late October, early November.
Well, I think the other thing, if you have time, you can do is to have Dr. Schweitzer reach out to these paving companies who want to bid and ask them, what's your sweet spot? So that you can get your best price to us, but also make sure that the work is ready to go.
You can get the subcontractors and all that good.
Did they have an estimate of how long the project would take?
We set bookends on this particular project, trying to cut them off before our teachers came back. In this particular case, I gave myself within the original bid, basically a 1 week buffer on the back end of this bookend. So it was to begin the project today. So June 10th was the front end of the bookend. The back end was going to be the week before our teachers and staff come back. I have to look at the calendar to tell you what week that is. But we have about a 1 week buffer before they come back. So in that time frame, holidays considered, it's a tight crunch. And the complexity of the project is the problem. If it were just paving, it's not a terrible lift. It's the grading and drainage work, and you're having multiple subs. I hate to pick an open scab for me right now, but you see what's happening out of the Tryon pre-K facility when you're trying to negotiate between lots of different subs. You get some holdups and setbacks and some issues. So.
But if these companies are bidding, they're committing to being able to get it done.
That's correct. The other thing you get, if you wait a little bit, is I think you get a little more competition. Now, it doesn't mean the price is going to go down. It could go up. And I'll concede that point. But yeah, you are telling them if you're bidding on this project, it has to be done, and then they start cutting money or doing other
They're
things.
probably gonna beat these prices, is what.
Do we also will these folks be worn out with us and go like?
There's always that chance.
So I want to be fair to the companies that have taken the time to bid on this and simply say that it is unusual to have, especially a project of this scope, for a bidder to reject bids and delay a project. It does not say it doesn't go on, but it's one of those things where their bids are now public and out there for the world to see, which, there's nothing illegal or wrong with that. If you're the company, so if you're, either one of those two businesses, you're saying, I just exposed my bid process and now everybody can see that. Now I've got to figure that out. Now, again, how that dynamic plays out with relationships you have with companies, that's all up for everybody to talk about. You could take the route of saying, well, as the end user and the client, that benefits me, right? Because I want the lowest price and, don't care. On the relationship side with the companies you're trying to work with, you are paying a price. You know what I mean? So there is
you do such a good job on the front, you wouldn't want to make them upset or angry and not have them bid or to think that we weren't, appreciative of what they put together for us. By the same token, you want the best possible price you can get. We're using taxpayer money. So
I don't believe it's gonna be cheaper.
I don't.
And so we can make believe all we want, but it'll be cheaper.
no idea.
Masonry sanding up.
We got an election coming up in November, it's not gonna be cheaper.
As a business owner, this would make me mad. If we put together a bid for somebody and then it's public, that's a lot of time and effort. And then for it to be distributed, to be used against you, I would be angry as a business owner.
At the end of the day, we can only do what we got. I mean, if we don't have the money to do it, we don't have the money to do it. So
I'm saying we should never begun until we had the money.
Right.
Yeah. So we encourage you to demand that you do this in October, November.
I think we're clear on the direction. And for whatever benefit it is, I will certainly take ownership of, again, probably putting too much stock in the estimate that we received and that we thought it would be somewhere around the $500,000 mark. And with things being unpredictable, we had a little bit more pop up this year than we had anticipated. And certainly there are one or two variables that I never anticipated when we started having this conversation that are still out there that I think give me a little bit of heartburn. But I will accept all of the responsibility of maybe putting us out over too far on our skis without all the information to begin with. So my apologies for that.
all right, we're moving on.
Can I make a?
You can.
Since this is over talking, can I make a suggestion for the baseball and softball season that we have a way for people to come through on one end and make it available for them to come back out through the football field? Because it's causing a nightmare when you're at the football field, at the baseball field, softball field, when you have two parking like this all the way down, and then you have the activity buses, and you're trying to come up and you're squeezing through there, and somebody's trying to come down at the same time, there's just no way that that happens. But if you have a flow that you come in one way and you go out the other way, then that's gonna eliminate some of that safety issues there.
That's definitely a point we can make with our athletic director and our high school administrative team, make sure they address that. Yep. And a very valid concern. That is a safety concern on that note.
Dr. Schweitzer, we'll stick with you for construction update.
So no pictures, no nothing other than just this. Out at Tryon Elementary School, where we are with the pre-K addition, is that we have developed our final engineers punch list that Pinnacle Architecture has put together. They had their various mechanical engineers out looking at those systems. You'll be happy to hear on that front that their punch list items were really small. The team did a really good job of tackling some of those things. Really, the items we needed fixed were on the licensure requirement side. For NC pre-K. We went through with our team and did what I would call the aesthetic walkthrough. If you've ever built a home, it's that final walkthrough you do where you point out every crack or seam or thing that needs to be caulked. You go through all those pieces. Yet again, no major items that are on the list. Everything is pretty well within the realm of reason to address. Derek Champion, our GC, has assured me that he has mobilized a team that he has had out there. Hopefully today, I haven't had a chance to be out on site today. I'll be following up with him tomorrow. But for this entire week, he has told me that we are the sole focus of Champion Construction with wrapping this up. He is eager, as you can imagine, to button up this project. We need it to happen before the fiscal year, so we need to get this thing finalized. But that's where we stand right now.
Any questions for Dr. Schweitzer? Mr. Reed, any other old business?
No, sir.
About new business?
No, sir.
For information presented to the board, we have a preschool monthly report, the Head Start Policy Council minutes, the pre-K financial report, monthly financial report, monthly credit card report. Our next board meeting will be June 27th at 5:30. I will not be here. I'll dial in. Mr. Cole, will you be able to?
Yes, sir.
Be here? Probably. All right. There's NCSBA offered optional board training. First is Summer Leadership Conference, June 10th through the 14th at Wrightsville Beach. Board training, July the 15th and 16th at NCSBA office in Raleigh. The Fall Law Conference, October 16th through the 18th in Asheville. And then the NCSBA Annual Conference, November the 18th to the 20th in Greensboro. I do not have anything for public input, I don't believe. Okay. That said, I'll be looking for a motion for us to go into closed session for purposes of discussing personnel and attorney-client privilege.
So moved. A second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Carry 7-0. Thank y'all for coming, folks. Appreciate it.